Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first film in our latest series, Fantastic Foodie Films. This is Chocolat, made in 2000 and directed by Lasse Hallström, starring Juliette Binoche, Alfred Molina, and Judi Dench. Leslie Caron has a small role as a village widow whose husband died in World War I. The screenplay was written by Robert Nelson Jacobs and the score by Rochelle Portman, who is the first female composer to win an Oscar for Best Original Score for the film Emma, which had been made in 1996. She also received an Oscar nomination for the score of Chocolat. The film was both critically and commercially successful, opening to good reviews of the acting, screenplay, and music, and earning $152.7 million on an investment of only $25 million. Chocolat received 5 Oscar nominations, including the nomination for Best Picture. Harvey Weinstein was the head of Miramar when the film was made, long before his exit from the company in its recent sexual abuse scandal. Most critics gave the film good reviews, calling it delightful and delectable. Elvis Mitchell of the New York Times called the film a crowd pleaser, and the feature film version of Milk Chocolat an art house movie for people who don't like art house movies. Chocolat was filmed in several locations. The exteriors for the village square and the chocolaterie were shot in the tiny village of Flavigny-sur-Oserain in the Burgundy region of France, while the scenes of Vianne and Anouk climbing up and down the roadway from the river's edge to the village center were shot on the Rue de l'Ancienne Poste in the village of Benac et Caserac in the Dordogne. The filmmakers selected Flavigny by visiting several villages, which are part of a tourist consortium of picturesque French villages, until they found the perfect one, where they could easily construct their chocolaterie near the existing church. There is actually a chocolaterie in the village of Flavigny, but it's located in l'Abbaye de Flavigny, which makes anise candy that's sold worldwide in little tins decorated with flowered designs and old engravings. The river scenes were filmed at Fonthill Lake and Fonthill Bishop in Wiltshire, England. All the interiors were filmed on sets in Shepperton Studios in England or in a private mansion in the Cotswold region outside Oxford. Some of the filming took place on a farm in Bruton, England, chosen for its delightful country French feel. Lasse Hallström is a distinguished Swedish director with many major films to his credit. Born and educated in Sweden, he achieved international recognition with the film My Life as a Dog in 1985, following that up with What's Eating Gilbert Grape, 1991, The Cider House Rules, 1992, and Chocolat, now in 2000, many others. Plot summary. It's 1959, and a beautiful but mysterious French woman, Vianne Rocher, and her charming little girl, Anouk, follow the north wind across Europe, temporarily living in several tiny villages until they wear out their welcome. At last, they settle it in a charming village with very conservative values, whose population is led by the Comte de Reynaud, the town's mayor. When Vianne has the chutzpah to open a chocolaterie near the town's church during Lent, the mayor senses a new competitor for the minds and hearts of the townspeople and begins a battle to run her out of town. One of the townspeople, Armande Voisier, who happens to be Vianne's landlady, becomes her greatest advocate. Meanwhile, a group of river rats, led by a handsome young Roma named Rue, come to town, and a romance ensues between Vianne and the young man. Will Vianne be embraced by her neighbors, or will she be forced to continue her wanderings in search of a home? Fun facts about the film. The story is told by an unknown adult female narrator, and we don't find out until the end who she is. Victoire Divissol's voice as Anouk was dubbed by Sally Taylor Isherwood because Victoire's French accent was so hard to understand. The little girl was easily convinced to play Anouk when she was told that she could miss school and eat lots of chocolate. Flavigny had only 300 residents at the time of filming. 250 of them appeared as extras in the movie. Binoche took a 2-week chocolate-making course with the Paris chocolatier, and some of her creations were actually eaten by the villagers during the Easter festival near the end of the film. Most of the confections seen on screen had to be made of plastic because the real chocolates melted under the theatrical lights. However, some of the candies were real for the actors to eat safely. Although Johnny Depp was living in France at the time, none of his scenes were filmed there. All of them were shot in England, as were those of Judi Dench. Dench's husband was very ill at the time of shooting, so she declined to work in France in order to be near her London home during his convalescence. There is no cemetery or river in Flavigny. The crew built the cemetery near Fonthill Lake in England, especially for this movie. Anouk has an imaginary friend, a kangaroo named Pantonflou, who turns out to be a wallaby when we finally see him at the end of the movie. When we see Depp and Binoche jumping into the water in the river scene, they are actually doing the scene themselves without stunt people. They complained that the water was extremely cold and muddy. The close-up of Binoche's face in the water was actually shot in a water tank. Depp plays the guitar himself in 2 scenes and in the first and last songs on the soundtrack. The boat in which Depp and Binoche have their love scene was actually built on a stage and physically rocked to mimic the action of water. When the outside of the boat is shown after they kiss, the shadowy figures we see were added digitally. Depp's boat, the Reine Tora, is named for Hallström's daughter, Tora. Director Hallström is married to Lena Olin, who plays Josephine, the battered wife who escapes from her husband and is befriended by Vian. Hugh O'Connor, who plays the village priest, auditioned for the part with the Easter sermon he delivers in the film. When Binoche is shown in her kitchen, the action is very authentic, but those are not her hands. They are those of an extra wearing Vian's bracelet to make things look more authentic. The scene in which Melina gorges on the window display was shot on his last day of filming because Hallström was concerned that Melina might feel ill from eating so much chocolate, which indeed he did. In the scene in which Anouk throws her mother's ashes into the wind, some telephone lines had to be removed digitally so they wouldn't impair the period accuracy of the shot. Things to look for: luscious shots of all kinds of chocolate and the chocolate making process, real versus plastic chocolates, sounds of the winds of change as the north wind, the distinctive red cloaks worn by Vian and Anouk as they arrive in the village, the lovely interiors of the mayor's home, streets in scenes from Flavigny, the fake cemetery, the river scenes with the Roma river rats shot in England, Vian's and Rue's love boat, Binoche's real handmade chocolates at the festival. Alfred Molina chokes on a chocolate while he's gorging in the window of the Chocolaterie Maya. Watch how he handles this real event. Rachel Portman's lovely music with the sounds of indigenous flutes from Central America. The hands of an extra scene working the chocolate who stands in for Binoche. Anouk's imaginary friend, the kangaroo, which is really a wallaby. Now it's time to view Chocolat. Please be aware that it may be a few minutes before the film rolls. Enjoy.